Humans are actually the only animals that do those two things at the same time and like mix our waste streams. That's a weird human construct. And it stems from a need for privacy and, you know, the infrastructure that we've developed to move waste around. And so when we go back to nature's way, and we go back to lean back on biomimicry, if you separate those two waste streams, you're able to facilitate much easier downstream maintenance and monitoring. A big reason for that is because the nutrient profile of urine, it's basically water, nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, like those are the building blocks of fertilizers.
Hardware to Save a Planet explores the technical innovations that are giving us hope in the fight against climate change. Each episode focuses on a specific climate challenge and explores an emerging physical technology solution with the person bringing it into reality. I'm your host, Dylan Garrett. Hardware to Save a Planet is brought to you by Synapse. Make sure to click subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. Thanks for listening. Hello and welcome to Hardware to Save a Planet. Today I am delighted to be joined by Taylor Zehren, co-founder and CEO of Wasted. We'll be talking about pee and poop, something I get to do a lot of at home with my kids, but not so much at work. Taylor and her team are tackling how we manage human waste, and they've started with the portable waste infrastructure we have. Think porta-potties you see at outdoor concerts, construction sites, and trailheads. Apparently, our current approach to portable sanitation wastes 32 billion gallons of water every year, and over 6 billion gallons of human waste is unsustainably treated. And that's just from those portable use cases. There's also a missed opportunity in all that waste, as it has the ingredients to become valuable fertilizer. We need to grow food. To introduce Taylor quickly, she studied biology in college, and after graduation, she was a Fulbright scholar. She spent her scholarship year in Argentina teaching and traveling, and she'll have to tell us more about this, but I understand that during that time, she was inspired to found the nonprofit called Do Good Shit, focused on deploying better waste management systems in remote outdoor locations like the Himalayas. She then co-founded Wasted in around 2020 to tackle the waste problem at a bigger scale. Taylor, it's really awesome to have you here today. Thanks for joining.
Thanks for having me, Dylan.
So I'd love to hear more about the kind of founding story. I'm guessing, some of my guests kind of grew up dreaming of doing what they're doing today. I'm guessing you didn't grow up dreaming of tackling the human waste challenge, although tell me if I'm wrong. It sounds like you were inspired on this time you spent in Argentina, and I'm really curious to hear kind of what specifically you were seeing there that set you down this path.
Yeah, I love outdoor recreation. I do a lot of climbing and backpacking and skiing, and I got to play in the Patagonian mountains during my Fulbright. And when you go out into these pristine outdoor playgrounds, you often notice the things that stand out on the landscape that shouldn't be there. Toilet paper lily pads, we call them. Sometimes you see the toilet paper side of the trailhead, the garbage strewn out, and it's always such a shame. And in particular, I think with the waste management problem, the human waste management problem, it was just one of those issues that is so culturally invisible. And then when you see it, we couldn't help but ask ourselves, who's doing something about this? How are we going to address this influx of outdoor recreation that's happening? It's becoming so popular. Places like Patagonia are becoming so popular, right? The Instagram photo of the iconic, towers and the crystal blue lake, and everyone's going to go to that same site. But as humans, we leave things behind. And so the inspiration of Do Good Shit really came from there, okay, well, how do we make sure that we're leaving these natural environments better than we found them when we go out to enjoy them? And how do we be good stewards? And so I spent a lot of time with my co-founder, Thor, talking with land managers about what they're seeing with regards to waste management, what kinds of solutions they're using, when they're failing, when they're working. And we ended up coming up with a development thesis on how to manage waste in the backcountry that we ended up installing all over the world. And those installations happened in, the Himalaya, like you said, and in Bariloche, like in Argentina, where I was living, in Chile, across the West Coast. And yeah, it was really in the beginning just all about making sure that we were being good stewards of the land and the places that we loved to enjoy.
And then that, I guess, has now kind of transitioned to taking it beyond these outdoor environments.
The transition there was that management thesis that we were using in the backcountry was centered on urine diversion. So keeping, we had asked ourselves, okay, well, how would nature normally manage waste? And if you walk your dog's going to go pee, it's going to walk 10 feet, it's going to go poop. Humans are actually the only animals that do those two things at the same time and like mix our waste streams. That's a weird human construct. And
Really?
It stems from a need for privacy and, the infrastructure that we've developed to move waste around. And so when we go back to nature's way, and we go back to lean back on biomimicry, if you separate those two waste streams, you're able to facilitate much easier downstream maintenance and monitoring. A big reason for that is because the nutrient profile of urine, it's basically water, nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, like those are the building blocks of fertilizers. So if that watery nutrient goes into the land, then plants can uptake it and utilize it. Solid waste is still 80% water. It can be broken down and microbes and vertebrates in the soil can help process that stream. So that principle of source separation, of urine diversion, we were like, okay, well, the reasons that this works and these biomimetic principles that we're leveraging, that could be translated into a circular economy, right? Like, what if we were intentionally collecting that urine, intentionally collecting that waste stream, and we were actually turning it into fertilizers that could be used? In nature, nothing is wasted. So why are we wasting this material? Humans and our metabolic system are part of this greater natural metabolism and natural nutrient cycle that we should be contributing to and could be contributing to. And so that was the translation out. And the question was like, okay, well, then how do you get all this urine? If we want to do that, then look at the toilets that we flush every day, right? We go to the bathroom, we take that for granted, we flush the waste away. How do we access it? And portable sanitation jumped out as an elegant solution for us because it's an environment that you are already collecting waste in containers and you're already moving it around. So you don't have to immediately compete with sewer and you're actually getting paid to do all of that. So from a cash efficiency perspective, it made a lot of sense for us to leverage that ecosystem, that logistics and hauling and collection ecosystem to get that feedstock to ultimately aim to build the circular sanitation economy.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so it was actually, how do we collect these nutrients?
Yeah, it was like we knew all this weird stuff about managing pee and poop and where they could go and how they could be useful. And then it was a recognition that our sanitation paradigm was really weird. When I talk about the impact of wasted, I talk about how like the whole nutrient cycle, right? So that nutrient cycle right now we have twisted in a knot. And it's about, okay, well, how do we start to untie it? And where is a elegant way for us to enter? Like, where do you find that first thread to pull on as you try to untie that knot in our nutrient cycle? And that's how we landed on porta-potties, of all things.
Okay, and just to complete the picture on the kind of outdoor recreation piece of it, what are you doing in those sites with the waste? Are you also collecting there?
Yeah, so in do good shit, in most cases, you're looking at extremely remote environments. And so in most cases, the urine is going into an appropriately sized leach field. And then the solids are in a decomposition chamber where they're kept dry and they can sort of decompose. And you have this multi-stage sort of decomposition chamber at the back that process happens in. So it really limits the need for waste removal. In that case, you can work with the ecosystem to manage it in that way. There are obviously ecosystems that are not set up for that, right? Some desert ecosystems, some glacier ecosystems, right? And in those cases, there are ways to be collecting and removing the waste, but you're not bulking it. You're not adding a bunch of sawdust. You're not adding water. So it really reduces the need for waste removal. And in a lot of the sites we worked on with Do Good Shit, we're talking about places where they're helicoptering out 55-gallon barrels of waste all the time. And so at a bare minimum, we can really reduce that heli time by approaching the management in a different way. But most of the time, we're going to be working with the land. Yeah.
Right. Okay. But then with wasted, you're in places like, I mean, construction sites, parks, concert venues, things like this, and you can't exactly leave the waste on site. And you're seeing this opportunity to actually get the nutrients out of the urine.
Exactly.
So what about the poop? Is there something valuable to be derived from that, or what?
Yeah.
Why just the
Um,
focus on urine?
yeah, when you look at wastewater as a whole, our big municipal wastewater infrastructure, urine is only 1% of what goes into that waste stream, but it's 80% of nitrogen and 60% of phosphorus. So when we think about like what's valuable in our waste stream, it's, the urine. There are nutrients in feces as well, and there are things we can do with them. For a while, we played around with biochar production and ultimately found the material was really wet and it wasn't energy efficient enough for us to dry it. We've looked at things like anaerobic digestion, and those are options. When I look at building a circular sanitation company and startup, you have to think about focus. And I would love for the right partner to come help us treat feces and get 100% circularity in our business model. But you can't do everything yourself. And with systems level change, I think it really requires, focus and partnership.
So when we think about kind of the impact wasted can have, I'm thinking of two sides of it. One is we have the negative effect of all this wasted water today. That, I think, what was it, 32 billion gallons of water just in the portable waste infrastructure, and then you have the positive potential of all the sort of fertilizer production.
Mm-hmm.
Is one outweighing the other? Is it more about one than the other, or is it both?
Again, like I really think that in the case of wasted, we're talking about systems level change, and it happens on both sides. And that's the thing about circularity is it's not, oh, this is targeting one specific issue. This is a system we're talking about. And yes, to the point of water, we spend 1.2 trillion gallons of water flushing pee every year. Like, that's crazy. Why are we flushing pee? It's already liquid and it's valuable, right? It's just bonkers. And so, but it's sort of like everywhere you look at this system, you have these things that don't make sense. Like that knot I'm talking about. There's things that don't make sense all over the place. There's the way that we're using water in our waste management. There's where those nutrients are ending up. So we take poo and pee, and a traditional porta potty operator is going to take poo and pee and they're going to dispose of it at a municipal wastewater treatment plant. And it goes there with water from our households, industrial waste streams. It's mixed with all these emerging contaminants, microplastics, forever chemicals. All of this big slurry mess goes to this centralized facility. We spend 1% of global energy trying to treat that waste. We release a lot of emissions trying to treat that waste, 9% of global methane emissions, 3% of nitric oxide emissions. And a big part of what we're trying to do in that process is remove nutrients, right? Is remove nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, which is only urine is again 60% of the phosphorus and 80% of the nitrogen, but it's 1% of the volume. And so that's crazy. And these facilities weren't even designed to remove the nutrients. They were ultimately designed to remove the carbon, to remove the solids, and to prevent the spread of disease. And so we still have a lot of nutrient pollution happening. So those fertilizers, that nitrogen, that phosphorus, that potassium, it's going to fertilize something. It's either going to fertilize what we want it to fertilize, or it's going to end up in freshwater ecosystems where it's going to fertilize harmful algal blooms, and it's going to lead to all of these issues with nutrient pollution. And so it's just so inside out and backwards, right? And at the same time, we are fixing nitrogen from the air with the Haber-Bosch process, 3% of global energy, and we're mining phosphorus from the earth, which is a critical mineral, and we're running out of it. At this point, 70% of the phosphorus that we use in the US that supports our food system is coming from concentrated mines in Morocco. So, it's like everywhere you look in this system, there's these things that don't make sense. And I don't think it's not so easy to say, like, okay, you implement urine diversion in portable sanitation and you're going to see, this metric totally shifted. It's more about showing what's possible with circular sanitation and understanding that we can untie the knot of that nutrient cycle, and we can show that it's possible for us to be pulling nutrients, back in their right place. We eat, we go to the restroom, it goes back to the earth, we eat, right? There's this natural cycle of the way nutrients flow through our communities. And so, yeah, there's those sort of impactful touch points all over the system. And our work is showing that we can do each of them in a different way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's kind of rethinking the whole every step of that process.
And over time, it doesn't just have to be portable sanitation. Like, I think this is showing what's possible, and this is an elegant and cash efficient way to do that. But there's absolutely no reason why our stadiums, our airports, our homes, our office buildings couldn't, at the bare minimum, be using waterless urinals. That's an easy swap. So the built world is soon to follow and is a much larger stream of nutrients for us to access in the long run.
Mm-hmm. And I'm curious if you can, like, you talked about fertilizer production today is 3% of greenhouse gas emissions. Is there any way to compare the scale of the potential of what we could potentially get from our urine relative to our fertilizer needs? Is it a meaningful impact on that number?
Yeah, we could be replacing a significant amount of nutrients with the urine that we collect from human beings. Absolutely, yeah. I think it's it's like about 25% of our nutrient need could be replaced with human nutrients, which is significant.
Wow.
And
yeah,
and there's the psychological value of people realizing that they can be of benefit in the natural system. We think of humans as being above and outside of our natural ecosystem, and I think this is one of those opportunities for people to realize that they're deeply ingrained in it. And I think that psychological value is also not to be discounted.
Yeah, absolutely. And is it important that you're doing urine diversion at the source, like at the restroom level, or is there something we could be doing with our existing infrastructure? Toilets that are flushing with water. You said it's 1% of our waste stream by volume. Is there something we can be doing at the municipal water treatment facilities?
Yeah, there are some solutions that target municipal scale infrastructure that are recovering nutrients. From my perspective, source separation retains a lot of integrity in the waste stream. It's not ever coming in contact with industrial waste. So there's a lot of conversation about emerging contaminants, PFAS, all of these issues in the biosolids movement and in wastewater management in general, and waste management in general, organics too. And so much of that PFAS introduction is happening from industrial waste streams. And so when we do a rigorous, emerging contaminants and PFAS testing from the streams that we use, both intake and output, and like into our treatment train and out of it, and we don't see those contaminants come through in a big way. And often our fertilizers have lower PFAS levels than most drinking water standards. And so for me, I just think, if from an efficiency perspective, like, yes, it's harder to access that waste if you need to source separate it, but you also don't have to expend the energy to try to get it out of this massive volume of water and slurry, and you don't have the introduction of contaminants. So you lose efficiencies on some sides and you gain them on the other. And yeah, when you think about the volume, we're talking about 1% of that volume. So extracting it out of there is energy intensive as well, once it's all mixed together. So.
Okay. So fixing it at the sort of point of collection is there's a lot of value in that. And if I, kind of looking at your website and what I know about your business, that's a big part of what you've done is you've developed these porta-potties. I saw something called the conveyor toilet, I think, or something like this on your website.
Yeah, that's the mechanical separating toilet that we also use to do good shit that is in like our trailers and some of our semi-permanent installations. Yeah. Okay.
So you have the collection side, and then I imagine you have the sort of processing side too. How do you extract the nutrients out of the urine? I'm wondering. I was hoping you could kind of break both down for us. Like, what does it actually look like? What are your porta potties doing that are different from
we
today?
Have a product suite that we rent and deploy to collect urine. And there's different strategies of collecting urine inside of the different products. The conveyor toilet is in some of the products, so that has mechanical separation. It's basically a conveyor belt. Solids are going to land on the belts. Liquids are going to go down with gravity and with anatomy towards the front, and they're going to get plumbed separately. And then when you flush, that conveyor belt pulls solids backwards and away from the liquid stream. So that's the mechanical separation. That's in some of our products. We have urinals where standing peers use the urinal, and that urine is immediately captured and held separate from other waste streams. There are female urinals. There's a lot of different strategies that can be integrated into really any ecosystem where people are going to the bathroom. We have the conveyor belt toilets installed in homes and glamping sites and ADUs. So it's not to say that it's exclusively portable sanitation, but yeah, our porta-potties collect in these different ways. And once that material, our pump trucks go out and they have a tank that is separate for urine only, and they pump that material separately from the rest of the mixed waste, and it comes back into our facility. And sort of the first thing that happens in our treatment train is that it's essentially pasteurized. You could think of it as like pasteurizing milk. It's going to kill off any of the like biological contaminants that you would worry about. And from that point on, we start to do some filtration and we start to target the individual nutrients. So we make a solid phosphorus-based fertilizer in our facilities. We can like precipitate out that phosphorus into a solid form, and that's a more phosphorus forward product. And then that liquid can be the liquid, we target the nitrogen and we concentrate that down, and you get a more nitrogen forward liquid product. And so we're able to, at that point, then formulate our fertilizers.
And have you been able to mostly leverage kind of existing equipment and components for the various parts of that process, or are there places where you've had to innovate, engineer something that didn't exist before?
We have mostly been pulling technology that exists. I don't view Wasted as a deep technology company. I think that there are a lot of brilliant people that have invented a lot of things that can solve the climate crisis that we have today. And so we use like a lot of technology partnerships inside of our stack kind of across the business. We have some IP sort of like throughout it all in either the way we put things together or, the way that some of our urinal tanks are designed. We did make our own mechanical separator at one point. So we've gone through some engineering cycles, but for the most part, we're working closely with technology partnerships, and we own molds inside of contract manufacturers, and we try to use things that exist today for the most part. And the and then we formulate our fertilizers once we get the nutrients. But yeah.
What about the conveyor toilet? That existed already, or you guys designed that?
Yeah, the conveyor toilet is a partnership with that we have. We own the like exclusive distribution rights in the North America for that product. But that product existed, and it's what we sort of found and started utilizing with Do Good Shit when we started the business there. So yeah, there's pieces. Again, there's like pieces of the treatment train that we engineered ourselves, and there's pieces that we work with, but I wouldn't I don't consider this like a huge deep technology play. This didn't like come out of a lab. There's a lot of amazing technology partners that we have. Rich Earth Institute is why we moved to Vermont. They're amazing. We use some of their technology. So yeah, it's sort of both, but.
Yeah, I mean, right, that's the fastest way to get there if you don't have to invent something new.
Yeah, I mean, we went through some crazy product development cycles in the beginning, and ultimately we're like, okay, well, how do we get to market faster? And there's been a lot of amazing downstream benefits to that. We, for example, have been able to use a lot of equipment financing with traditional lenders as a startup that's not yet profitable and has very limited operating history because they're familiar with the assets that we use, right? So there's also all of these sort of co-benefits of sometimes using off-the-shelf technologies and trying to get solutions out into market quickly and get the proof of concept working quickly.
It does strike me though that maybe you've been able to leverage existing technology, but I imagine one of the kind of new or one one of the challenges you'll face or you must face is the sort of education component of it, or the, human behavior part of it. This is, like you said, that, humans are very particular about how we use the bathroom. It's a very like private, personal experience. In some ways, you're asking people to think about that a little differently, right? Which is probably a very positive thing. You and I were chatting just before this about some of what you do on the education side of the business. I'd be curious if you could share more about that and how that's why you see that as an important place to focus.
Absolutely. From a product development perspective, we've always tried to make sure that we're designing for the lowest common denominator. So we never want to ask someone to fundamentally change the way they're going to the bathroom. We learned that in the nonprofit space of like, if you're asking someone not to pee somewhere, they're going to pee on the sign that says don't pee here. So we've like learned that you really need to design for the lowest common denominator. And I mean, on the fertilizer front as well, we want to always make sure that we're designing it in a way that fits with current application methods, that fits with current nutrient profiles, et cetera, et cetera. But there are still these taboos, and it's so central to the mission and vision of Wasted to try to break those down as we think about shifting this paradigm. And that's why we have a big sticky brand. That's why we focus so much on brand and on storytelling in the way we build the business. But when you walk into a Wasted unit, regardless of which of the different units you walk in, there's a lot of infographics around you. And there's a lot of education around sort of where you're sitting in the nutrient cycle, what the business is doing, where your waste is going to go. And it's fun because a lot of the times folks that go use our toilets or rent our toilets at an event or on a construction site will later go purchase a bag of WeBloom. And it's like they're getting to engage on both sides. Their nutrients are contributing to this thing, and then they can buy the fertilizer and, have a flower garden. And that's so beautiful. And so I think it's shocking to people, but that educational platform is so important because it facilitates the aha moment of, oh my gosh, wait, this is so cool. This porta potty isn't just like a gross toilet. I'm contributing here. I also think it's reduced vandalism in our units in the long run. Like, people are participating in something that's bigger than themselves. And if they kind of connect to that, I don't know, they just treat the products a little differently also. But yeah, I mean, it's like I was telling you, seeing kids engage with our products is so fun and so cool, especially when it's the conveyor toilets. I was saying that we deployed our trailer at the Vermont Green Soccer games here in Vermont, and you can see sort of from the top of the stand, look down and just like watch kids like drag their parents into the trailer. You've got to see this. And it's always such a hit with that younger generation who doesn't even yet know that they're supposed to be freaked out by it, right? They don't even have our cultural tainting of like, ew, like pee is dirty. Why would we turn it into fertilizer? Like, it doesn't ring true to them yet. And so I always say, like, we gotta get those youngins thinking that this is normal, like right from the get-go, so that the next generation doesn't have this strange cultural perception of circular sanitation.
Yeah, totally. Oh yeah, my kids would be all over this. They're just like anything related to poop and pee, their curiosity is just through the roof for some reason. Yeah, that makes sense. And so, but I'm thinking a little bit about your kind of your go-to-market or your sales process, because a lot of people using your products in these portable situations aren't necessarily your customers that are paying for the rental or buying the units, right? So, and they may not have a choice that this is the porta potty available to them. So they go in, they get the education. Who are you selling to, and what is it that's convincing them to choose your products versus other conventional porta potties?
Yeah, you're exactly right that we design our products for our customer's customer, and we love that captive audience for the educational purposes, but ultimately we have to win our business on having a better service. So this is a service business, right? And we have to show that we can consistently provide a more reliable service and cleaner toilets. And that's really how we win business. We have to be able to sell at cost parity, and we do. And, there are customers that are motivated by the sustainability narrative, and that may motivate their doing business with us. But I think for the most part, you have to consistently win and grow that business by having more reliable servicing. And this industry has not seen a lot of innovation over the years. I think the last big innovation in portable sanitation was the transition from fiberglass to plastic. There's not been a lot of movement since then. And a third of the industry still routes on pen and paper. And I can't even imagine running this operation like that. Like, we have tech-enabled route optimization, and we use a software to do that. And it just like allows, I think it improves our service quality and service reliability quite a bit. Also, like, our technicians, the people out there doing the work that makes this possible every day, they are also trained. Like, they also get to go to the farms and apply fertilizer. They also get to bring the feedstock back to go into the treatment train. And again, just the level of buy-in of, oh, wow, this is bigger than just, ew, gross, it's toilets. And I think there's a level of pride that comes to the work when it's a circular initiative that doesn't exist in sort of the linear paradigm. And that also improves service quality and cleanliness inside of the operation.
And do you also have a revenue stream that conventional waste management businesses don't have on the fertilizer side?
Exactly. So we have both cost savings and a secondary revenue stream. So a traditional porta potty operator is going to pay per gallon to dispose of all of the waste that they collect in their operation when they dispose of it at wastewater. And we pay only a percentage of, like, only a fraction of those disposal fees for the solids that we collect. And the bulk of the volume is liquids that come into our own treatment train. So we have cost savings there on disposal fees. And then that same material has the opportunity for the secondary revenue stream in fertilizer sales. So it sort of shifts, it turns the cost lever into a profit lever in the business model, and allows for sort of fundamentally better unit economics. And I think that's really exciting, because having circular business models that are truly a better economic option is something that we need to have around, and show that circular paradigms can be better for, people, profit, and planet all together.
Right. It's not just do-gooderism.
That's right.
Right. It's actually good business. When I think about scaling, and this, I imagine, I mean, we've talked about the scale of the portable sanitation market is massive in and of itself. But at some point, you'll reach some limit. There's only so much urine you can collect from porta potties. Do you think about that as a future of the company, like going beyond this business and getting into, you mentioned stadiums and other more kind of permanent infrastructure down the road? Is that already a place, the kind of thing you're getting into, or is that like so far down there that it's not part of the roadmap yet?
Yeah, wasted is already creeping its way into the built world. So we already have our conveyor toilets and dry urinals that are installed in built world settings and permanent installations. And we have IoT waste monitoring attached to those tanks, where we know when it fills up and we can deploy our trucks. So the idea is we have a network of hauling and logistics infrastructure established, and these additional collection sites, like a stadium or an airport or anywhere where high volumes of people are passing through and going to the bathroom, that you would be able to utilize that same infrastructure to bring in additional feedstock volume. And that's absolutely something that, when I look on the horizon of the company, I would love to see that happen, because it just means that we're having larger impact and we're replacing, more synthetic nutrients in our agricultural practices. So I definitely think that's a direction that we'll go with time.
What about getting into homes? Is that...
Yeah.
Would that be sort of like the last frontier, or what does that look like?
Yeah, it's a less dense setting, right? Than single family homes are a less dense setting, but it's definitely possible. There are some communities where home level collection's already happening. So Wasted does some work on Cape Cod, and there's a community of folks. Cape Cod is a place where there's a lot of nutrient pollution happening. So some of the freshwater ponds close in the summer because of nutrient pollution, as well as some of the bays. So it's a place where you really see the downstream effects of this problem acutely. And in that community, there are community scale initiatives for urine diversion to enter homes there. And leaky septic is a big problem. Extending sewer networks is really expensive. So they're looking to these sort of non-networked solutions at the home level. And urine diversion is a very interesting opportunity. And so there are folks that are already doing it, and Wasted already hauls for them. Most of them don't have permanent fixtures because there are plumbing codes that need to shift for that to happen in Massachusetts, but they'll use other collection methods, and then, we'll come pump out barrels of urine for them. So it's sort of these strange little microcosms of the world where it's happening right now, but it's definitely possible, and it's definitely something that, like I always say, I imagine my great grandchild being like, "Oh my God, I can't believe that we ever used to flush these nutrients. That's so crazy." I think that's sort of an inevitable direction here with our management of nutrients as we continue.
Right.
Yeah.
And I guess to get there, we'd almost have to design for it at the community level than at like the individual. Like if I were to go remodel my house and say, okay, I want to be a Wasted home.
Mm-hmm. I mean, yeah, like if you were inside of our servicing radius and you wanted to do that, you could install a conveyor toilet in your home, and we would put a sensor on it and collect for you. But I do think that it will need to be, like a community driven initiative, because there are things like plumbing codes that need to change and things like that, but in some states. But yeah, I think that transition is very possible.
We've touched on it a little bit, but is there anything else you'd say about your vision for the future of Wasted? Like what kind of impact you hope to have with the company? What kind of timescale that looks like?
Yeah. I think that there's the work of Wasted is like, it's always been for me, Wasted's vision has always been about catalyzing circular sanitation. So our portable operations show that that's possible, but then you have this opportunity to prove the unit economics of nutrient recovery and fertilizer sale, and have all these strategies for making that possible. And you can really disrupt sanitation at a larger scale than that, and you can ultimately build resilient supply chains for nutrients that facilitate food sovereignty and nutrient sovereignty inside of our communities, and like really reimagine the way that we think about waste at a societal level, And so when I think about what I want to have, what role I want Wasted to play in the world, it's like, I want to change the way that people think about waste. And if you can do that with something as visceral as human waste coming out of our own bodies, I think you can really unlock that in a lot of other contexts as well. So yeah, that catalyzing circularity is really the role I want Wasted to play.
Okay, so I have 3 last questions for you. The first is, how optimistic or pessimistic are you about the future of the planet, and why?
Mm-hmm. I think that if you're going to build a business, especially a climate business, you have to be irrationally optimistic. Because it's so hard, and it feels like you are fighting a battle that is so big that you could never possibly put a dent in it. I also think that when you're operating in these spaces and, climate technology, you meet all of these passionate people that are taking that optimism to really amazing projects. And you can't help but be so inspired by that energy. And I think you just have to hold it. I'm a trained scientist, and I'm very pragmatic. So that's something that I'm sort of constantly battling in my entrepreneurial journey. But yeah, I think you have to stay optimistic, and you have to sort of recognize the power of, up against that doom and gloom, you have to recognize the power of joy. We are building a toilet company, and like sometimes just the power of like a silly toilet poop pee pun and the joy of that against the climate crisis. We're talking about circularity, and it's like all these big complex problems. And I think, yeah, you just have to stay connected to that optimism, which is a daily practice. But I really try to cultivate that. And my co-founder and husband Thor is like the world's brightest optimist, and so it's contagious. Yeah, in the climate,
hard not to be around him.
it's contagious. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I should say that some of that joy that you're talking about really does come through in Wasted's marketing and messaging and names you have for things and stuff. So I would encourage everyone to go check out your website.
You can't take
just
yourself too
because
seriously while building a toilet company. You just can't.
Yeah. What advice do you have for someone not working in climate today who wants to do something to help?
My advice for somebody who doesn't want to work in climate who wants to help is to get engaged at the community level where you live and the things that you can sort of like touch and organize inside of your own world. And I think that, you know, it's so easy it's so easy to overthink individual action, and it's so easy to feel like the population scale stuff is so attainable. And I think sometimes we breeze over the power of community scale action where you have like a group of people that are deeply placed, like they deeply care about the place that they are in this sort of like place-based first degree organization that can happen. I think that that's really powerful, and a lot of good can happen in that zone. So it's like, where can you volunteer? Who are the people in your community that care about the things you care about? How can you, you know, give your time and energy towards local politics, towards local organizations? Like what can you do sort of inside of your community? I think there's a lot of power to be built there without having, you're not gonna, individual action can sometimes feel so small, and you're not gonna change corporate greed yourself not working in, you know, so it's sort of like, how do you nail that middle? And I just think that community work can do a lot of good.
Yeah, well done.
Yeah. The answer to that question of someone who inspires my work a lot is Robin Wall Kimmerer. She's a botanist, author, and an indigenous voice in that space. And she wrote the book Braiding Sweetgrass. And I highly recommend reading that. She also wrote The Serviceberry, which is a recent one. But I think that as a scientist, her blend of sort of Western science and indigenous environmental knowledge, I find to be just incredibly inspiring. And so much of my work has focused on like biomimicry and sort of like, I think it's really inspiring to ask like how we take that sort of that ancient knowledge and reincorporate it into the way that we're building society today in our modern world. And I think her thought leadership is just like absolutely beautiful. Okay.
Taylor, that was really fun. Thank you for your time and for everything you're doing.
Appreciate that. Great to get a chance to chat with you. Thanks for spreading the good word on all of the amazing climate solutions that exist.
Absolutely. Hardware to Save a Planet is brought to you by Synapse. To find out more about us and how we develop hardware solutions for the world's most ambitious companies, head to synapse.com. And then make sure to search for Hardware to Save a Planet in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere you like to listen. Make sure to click subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. On behalf of the team here at Synapse, thanks for listening.